until it loads. Alrighty. So down here at the bottom, there's a page called Notes. Ought to change that. This is on Contents. Down here at the bottom. Why don't we change the name of that to like JavaScript Notes. Make it easy to find. Content, scroll down to the bottom, JavaScript Notes. There's an incredibly long PowerPoint called HTML CSS. We're not going to cover it because it's 223 pages long. Let's take a peek at it. And I adapted it. It says it was written by such and such, and then I added my examples at the end of it. So, web pages are text files. It's all they are is a text file. You can create one in Notepad or TextPad or whatever. And then they transmit the really cool stuff, the pictures and and the sounds and stuff like that via a different mechanism. But when your web page, when your browser wants to view something, it just makes a request to the server, and the server has to open that web page and send it back to your browser. And what your browser does is it constructs a model of all that data and figures out how it's going to display it on the screen. And it doesn't have to display it on the screen in any specific way. Yeah, to be compliant it does. But you can make a browser that displays text only. For example, it would just ignore all other formatting tags. Browsers are a lot more compliant than they used to be. For a while, Microsoft sat on their laurels, and their browser was pretty strange. You had to do strange hacks to get the HTML to work. And then Chrome and Firefox surpassed it in popularity, and so they started trying real hard. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language, which describes the document structure and the formatting. Nowadays, formatting is not supposed to be embedded directly into the HTML. In the beginning, that's the only way you had to do it. You'd put it, a text tag, and you'd say, okay, I want this text to be red, and I want it to be a certain size, and you'd embed that directly into the HTML. But that's considered poor development anymore. You're supposed to put your formatting in a different part of the document so that you have a web page and then you can give it to somebody else and they can format it without even touching your HTML. They can just go in and modify what's known as the cascading style sheets. So tags, closing tags. The closing tag just means that it's the same thing with a slash in front of it. So this marks the beginning of the document. This marks the beginning of the header. All sorts of pages about the header, all about the page are stored in the header. You don't see what's in the header when it's displayed on the screen, but it modifies the way it is displayed. You can have a title for the document. You can have a body. The vast majority of our stuff is going to be stored in the body because that's the bulk of the web page. H1 stands for header. P stands for paragraph. Text item. If you're using a Mac today, I really don't know what editor to suggest you use and how to launch it, so I'd ask for those of y'all in class to go ahead and just suffer using through the PC if you're going to follow along. Or you can open up your favorite text editor and type in the notes, but I don't know how to get it to view for you. You'd have to sit down and do it. So an example. In this language, tabs are unimportant. They just help us. However, like I said, it can be so difficult to figure out where the flaws are that it's really of critical importance to go ahead and put in all the tabs just to try to add some structure to it so that you can make sense of what's going on. For example, if we miswrote this /p tag, it could conceivably mess up everything after it. And if we don't have things structured nicely, then we might not be able to spot the problem. So, tabs, not necessarily, highly recommended. This is not JavaScript, this is HTML. HTML was invented first. Then Netscape came up with JavaScript, which was a way to provide interactivity to HTML. Before that, the only interactivity HTML had is that you could type in things into a field and you could click a submit button. It's really all you could do. So if you look at web pages written like in 1994, that's really about all they were, is text and links and little buttons that would take you to other places. JavaScript allows you to change the appearance of it, to load up data from the server without refreshing the web page. That's very important because every time you refresh a web page, that's when your browser hangs there with the little spinning, and it's got to do all the communication with the web page, and it's, you know, you don't like it when your web page is frozen waiting for a new page to be delivered. The fewer times the web page has to be reloaded from the server, the better. And so if the JavaScript can make queries to the web page, get that data, and then change the web page, rather than go back out there and force a reload of the entire thing, the better off you are. So JavaScript was created to add interactivity. Things could, you know, create drop-down menus, you know, fill in tables, change the appearance completely in response to your clicks, load up, you know, new messages and stuff like that. They called it JavaScript just because the programming language Java was becoming a big thing. It has absolutely nothing to do with Java, even though it sounds Java, JavaScript. Nah. So when a standard was defined, when it was published as a standard, they gave it a strange name, ECMAScript, ECMA. I don't even know what ECMA is, but everybody still calls it JavaScript. So the HTML file has to have the extension .htm or .html. We can create our HTML files with text editors. I think I'm going to do that. I'm going to go to my search box and type in TextPad. TextPad. If you feel like doing this in Notepad+, that's great, as long as you know how to launch it as a web page. I'm unfamiliar with that editor. What we're going to do is we're going to type in stuff here, and we're going to click the little planet here, and that's going to view the page in web browser. Are we on Y? Something like that. All right. Lecture Y, but it's an HTML page, so don't save it as type text page. Choose HTML. And it's quite plausible that if you typed in .html, it would change this anyways, but we've seen that Python, even if you give it a txt extension, it still saves it as py if you're using idle. All right, we're going to create my first web page. It's lost my font size preference. To change the preferences in this editor, TextPad, I'm choosing Configure, Preferences, Document Classes, Default. I'm clicking the little down arrow, and you don't need to change this. I just have to change it because I need to increase my font. Document Classes, Default, open the little thing, choose the font, make the font larger. That'll probably do. What? Okay, I'll change it for HTML in particular. All right, finally. And apparently I chose to make it italic rather than bold. Once more with feeling. Document begins with HTML, unless you're doing something very particularly strange, XHTML or XML or something, which is beyond the scope of this discussion. XML is a way to communicate data by expressing it in a similar format. But in XML you get to define all your tags and what they mean.
Didn't you mean to create a closing tag?
Yes, I did. Thank you. That's a closing tag. Now we're going to add a body tag and a closing body. Then we're going to add a paragraph tag. And then a closing paragraph tag. And you just have to format things in a way that makes sense. It's perfectly legal to do that. One interesting thing to note is that HTML doesn't consider that any different from that. It's going to display the same thing. It just assumes that every word has a space between it. If you put a whole bunch of spaces, it doesn't care. It's going to display it as though there were one space between it. So what if I want a new line? Well, there's a way to get that going. All right, and there we see it. This is my text. Very itchy-bitchy, but that's okay. What if I wanted a new line? Well, you can embed a Unicode character. I've mentioned Unicode before. It's the super standard that includes ASCII plus characters for every other language, Romanian, Algerian, everything that's been added. So those are added with an ampersand at the beginning and a semicolon at the end, and then something between them. And you put stuff, you use Unicode characters for things that would otherwise be treated like as tags, or to insert, correct the fact that it ignores spaces. We can put in a non-breaking space here between the ampersand and the semicolon, MBSP, like that. Now when we view it, we're going to see things tabbed out a little bit. Well, what if I tried to put really cool angles around that? That's not going to work. I'm surprised it even displayed. We certainly didn't get to see them. Why? It's treating that like it's the beginning of a tab. But it's not the beginning of a tab. We would have to embed another Unicode character for that. So I'm going to delete that less than and add ampersand LT for less than semicolon, and that's the character for angle. Much better. We didn't have to add one for the greater than sign, although it would kind of be correct to go and do that, because there was no possibility for treating that wrong, right? It's going along the code, is looking for the less than to mark a new tag, and it just blips right past that greater than because it wasn't part of any tag. So we did not have to do that. But if we wanted to, we could put ampersand GT semicolon there, and that would work. You can also specify Unicode characters by their numeric code. So if you want to print, a Japanese yen symbol and you don't remember the letters for it and you knew the Unicode variant, you could do that. No need to get any examples of that. So let's go and find a picture that we could put in our web page. We do that with the image tag. Well, I need to know the URL of an image for this to work. I think I'm just going to go out to Google. Well, that didn't work. Google.com. I think I'm just going to look for diode. Click image. Yeah, there's one right over there. I have a picture right here. I'm going to right click on it, and if you're using Chrome, it's called copy image address. If you're using IE, I believe you check properties. Click properties and then go and copy it from the dialog. So I chose copy image address from that. I could go and find a super easy one, that anime character, but I don't really want to anime character on my web page. So let's see what this pad looks like. If it's not too long, that'd be pretty nice. Oh, great. Yeah, that's not looking too good. We may download an image. If we download an image to our directory, that's probably even safer and better. So go and find an image you like, right click, and you know how to do Google image searches, I'm sure. Right? Go and find an image you like, right click, save as, save image as, and put it in the same directory as your homework, as your notes. And try to give it a good name, an easy name for you to remember. I'm just going to call mine Diode. Whatever you looked for, kittens or, you know, AR-15s or whatever. Just give it a good name. If I go back here and I type image space src for source, src equals, and I give it that file name, diode.jpg, in quote. Now the image tag doesn't have a closing tag. So this will work without a closing tag. I don't think it's an error if you do that, but it's what's known as a self-closing tag. And to indicate that it's a self-closing tag, you can put a slash there. And if you send your HTML code to a verifier, if you load up a verifier web page and whatever, it'll complain about picky things like that. All right, that's my text and that's my image. The web page, the PowerPoint shows something else. I'll do a quick walk around because I'd like for y'all to get a picture on your screen. An alt tag. The alt tag is for screen readers, things like that. Something that gets displayed if the image itself can't be displayed. If that image can't be displayed, right, or if the user can't see it and they're visually impaired or whatever, then they can probably find the alt text and see what it's supposed to be. So if you're going to develop, disability compliant web pages, you'll be adding extra information. Well, why don't we just put that, even if we don't see it, and it'd be nice to put it. So I'm going to go back and add an alt tag right before the closing of this. Excuse me, I'm calling it a tag. That's really lame. I've already said this is the tag, and what is the thing that has the equal sign? I mentioned it, see if anybody remembers. Those are called attributes. Source is an attribute of the image tag. ALT is another attribute. ALT equals diode pic. Whoops, I need to put quotes around it, not a colon. ALT equals, quote, diode picture, or some descriptive text, whatever's descriptive for you. You certainly do not need to hit return like that. So when I view it, I need to be saving it each time. If I try to view it without saving it, it's not like idle. It does not offer. So I just hit the little disk icon, and I haven't been doing that, so you may not have been seeing this stuff, or I hit Control S. I will try to mention when I hit Control S. Just a moment, I'll wander around and see how y'all are doing. All right. Now it's not telling me the alt text. It'd be kind of neat if I floated over. There's a way to get some float over text so that when you hover your cursor over it, you get to see a description of it. Sometimes I find that very annoying when I'm using a web page and it's popping up float over text. So we could go and find out other attributes of the image tag. Image tag attributes. This says it has 2 required attributes. They're saying it's mandatory to add alt text. Certainly a good idea. You could also change its height and its width. These can be expressed in percentages or in absolute values. 42 means 42 pixels. If I wanted that thing to fill up most of my screen, I could do something like this. Width equals, quote, 100%, end quote.
Matter which order you do it?
No. I could put the alt tab, the alt text first, and then the source, and then the width. The order is not important. All right, that's a lousy picture to blow up to 100%. I'm probably going to undo that. Specifying things in absolute values is considered pretty lame. because you could be looking at it with a phone with a 480 pixels display, although nowadays phones have more pixels than our giant monitors or whatever, right? Or you may want to be able to resize the page or whatever, and if it's sized to a specific pixel size, it's not going to work. And like I said, you're not really supposed to put your formatting in the HTML at all. But HTML was invented long before the invention of cascading style sheets and the way to specify things via styles. So those tags are still out there. In a lot of cases, they are known as deprecated. Deprecated meaning not recommended and not guaranteed to be supported in the future. But something like the size tag for images is so important that I doubt that that one will ever be deprecated. That looked lame, so I'm going to change it to 20%, and then I'll do my wander around. You do not have to follow my examples exactly. You can, whoops, what did I do wrong? I don't think I saved it. How do I know that? I see an asterisk up there.
The percent sign twice.
It's funny that it worked. These browsers try to be real forgiving of mistakes. For example, if I don't close the body tag, still works. Doesn't spit out an error message because the browsers are assuming that the HTML is not going to be written entirely to spec. It better be, but if it's not, it makes its best effort at displaying it. Clear. If you make a mistake in the path, like that, you try to view it, you're going to get your little broken image, except I didn't save it, so we don't see the broken image. Control S it. It's just habit for me, and I never say it. There we go. Right? Displaying a broken link, you're familiar with seeing those, means that the path to the image is saved. Probably means in this case that you just didn't save it into your homework directory, or whatever directory you're saving your PY files. It's probably in the downloads directory. So you just have to go and fetch it and put it in the right place. You can also specify a path. Right. Users, JG, whatever, right? We're not going to do that. Or you can specify a relative path. Go up a directory and then go into my images directory and then find it there. A relative path meaning, in comparison to the HTML file, it'll wander up the directory tree. Or maybe it's just in a subdirectory of this folder, right? Images. So I could go out there and I could create an images directory in my notes directory where my HTML file is and drop the diode file there. It is not a bad idea at all to break up your project like that, to put all the images in one directory. Make sure I haven't broken it. Control S, run it. All right, now we're back. All right, text formatting tags. These are, like I said, deprecated. We're not supposed to do that anymore. We're supposed to do it through styles, which we haven't talked about. But they probably still work. Let's go and add an emphasis tag to highlight one of the words. So I think that the word my is really important. So I'm going to add an emphasis tag. And then I'm going to close it. You can see that if you did strict formatting of the tags, right, this would get really tedious. You see what I'm saying? So you just got to come up with something that makes sense to you. Let's view it. All right, emphasis. This chose to emphasize it via italics. Through style sheets, you could change it so that emphasis was done by changing the color of it or making it larger or bolding it, that kind of stuff. I'm going to leave that in there. Let's put a header in it. Above this P, do H1, which stands for biggest header. HTML is amazing. \H1. So H1, HTML is amazing, angle \H1. Control S to save. Run it. Alright, there's our header. HTML is amazing. If you change it to H2 and H3, it'll get a little bit smaller. And again, through styles, you can change the appearance of those headers completely. Right, this looks pretty old school. This looks like, a web page that would have been developed, in 1994 or something like that. There's a table tag for organizing things into tables. Now this one gets a little bit more complicated to type. We're going to give it a shot, and if it doesn't work, we need to talk about how to comment stuff out. What if we had a paragraph? Angle P into angle, and we put some little editorial comment like stupid. And we decide that's really rude. No. More to the case, we decide that that needs to be a comment. What you would do is you start your comments with angle, exclamation mark, dash, dash. And now I forget, do you just close it with a single dash or with a dash, dash? Yeah, there we go. There we go, like that. And that's silly to have that in there. So, whatever comment we wanted to put in there, this is a comment. You ought to put in a more informative comment than that. If you need to black out, green out an entire section of code, don't do this. You start your comment tag there, you stop it there, and now the text is gone. So, like I said, if we manage to completely break your page and we can't fix it in time, we'll probably just comment all that code out and go on. So a table. Now if you look up table tags online, you're going to see a lot of different examples. Some of them are going to have more attributes than what we're doing here, or more sub-tags, nested tags. So I'm going to do table, and then underneath it I'm going to do slash table. TR stands for row. And now I'm going to add some columns to it. TD means start an element inside that row, kind of like a column. Slash TD. TD B slash TD. Now we're going to end that row, slash TR. And let's begin another row. We're only going to make a 2x2 column because otherwise it's kind of tedious. To get the next two rows, why don't we just copy those guys and paste them? And maybe we change the A and B to something else. So I'm just going to copy those. No, I'm going to copy this whole block because I almost forgot. You have to create a new row. So I'm copying all four of those lines, pasting them there. And then maybe I'll change them to 1 and 2. Something to distinguish. Save my work, Control S, or click the disk, run it, and there's my little table. That's kind of lame. It's not spaced out, doesn't have lines around it, but it is a table. Tables can be used as a somewhat primitive way of formatting things, right? Because we can put an entire subsection of our page right then and there inside a table element, and it'll resize appropriately. So you can divide your web page up with tables, and you can have subtables, and you can have subtables. Now that's kind of primitive. It's like using a hammer for everything. But I do it when I have to do something quick and dirty just because I'm familiar with the tags. Let's put a little border around our table, and this is going to be our first example of seeing styles. I'm going to go back to the table command, and I'm going to type style equals, quote, quote, border equals 1px, standing for pixel, it's going to be 1 pixel wide, solid, what's my color going to be? Red, in semicolon. This is an appropriately, and there's something wrong with what I've done. Is it colons? Pretty sure it is. Yeah, it's colons. Everything inside the style tag uses colons as their delimiter rather than equal signs. So make it say border colon 1px solid red. Now, style attributes do not have closing style attributes. You just keep listing them. I think the background one might be BG color colon yellow. Strictly speaking, we should be putting single quotes around these colors. And every one of these needs to be terminated with a semicolon. But if you forget to put a semicolon after the last one, the browsers are generous. Don't cause an error. And it didn't work. It must not be BG color. I goofed. Background color CSS. Maybe it's just background dash color. Yeah. All right, so where it said BG color, apparently we're not supposed to abbreviate it. I'm just going to delete the whole thing. And if it doesn't work this time, we're going to skip it. Background dash color. People use HTML editors that, and there's my little table. What if I wanted it expanded? I could add some padding to it. And that'll be the last thing we do to it. We're not getting lines between the elements. We could fix that. Not gonna. I'm going to add one more style attribute to mine. So before the quote, padding colon, not too big, 3% of the screen. Padding colon 3%. Control S to save it. What if we want to change the color of the font? My recollection is just color. So let's set a foreground color. But let's do it to one of the pieces of text. Let's say the A is so important we want to change its color. So I'm going to go down to this TR tag, or this TD tag, and add a style attribute to it. Style equals, quote, color, quote, blue, semicolon, end quote. And did you notice I made a goof here? I forgot to put a semicolon here, but that's okay. Still works. So this style is only applicable to the tag to which it is attached. So that style stops as soon as it hits that. Save my work, view it. I should have chosen a better color. But yeah, that A is visible. To teach y'all correct habits, I should probably be putting quotes around these things. Not going to bother. You can also embed HTML RGB colors directly in them so that you're not just limited to names. Change blue to red just so it's more visible. At least on my screen up here. They don't look much different. Control S, tape up, run it. All right, now we see it. Now we've seen the results of style attributes. What we ought to be doing is moving our style attributes, or as many of them as possible, up into the header or in a separate document. If you've ever used Dreamweaver, I think that's what they try to do, is as you apply styles to it, it puts a label on your tag and then goes and creates an associated style attribute to match, which we'll probably do if we have enough time. Let's add a button. We don't have any JavaScript yet. We want a button that'll do some JavaScript. And I want to get the text exactly right, so forgive me for hitting my notes. All these notes are also in here, but I stopped following the PowerPoint right. If I scroll down here at the bottom, I'm absolutely sure I have examples of using a button and so on. Thought I did. This may not. This may be the one that I did not modify. Okay, that's what notes are for. Notes are gone. What do you do when you can't find it? You either open up a document or you go to Google. I think I put all the notes in the JavaScript document. All right, finally. Button, tag, HTML. Sad thing is I'm pretty sure I got it right, but I don't want to make mistakes, because if I type mistakes, alrighty. That is the syntax for it. That's the tag. This attribute specifies the type of the button. Guess what? There can be more than one type of button. There can be like radio boxes, you know, which are the circles, or check boxes. And then the text for the button is inside the tag. Just like a P tag, some text, and then a closed P tag. Easy enough to remember. Let's add a button to the underneath our table. So button, angle button, type equals quote button, end quote, close, and let's put some text. Click me. Angle slash button. If I was you, I wouldn't put this on the next line. It was just starting to scroll out. Can I close my document selector and get more space? Eventually? Yeah, I'll put it back. All right, there's my click me button. Doesn't do anything, but it's there. We want to make the button activate some JavaScript. We're going to put the script in the wrong place. You should put all of your script in the head. We didn't even put a header up there. And I'd like for the script in this particular case to be real close to the button. So above the button command, below the table. I may back tab all this all the way back to the script, end angle. We're going to define a function. It's going to be in JavaScript. JavaScript is a different beast in Python. You don't use the def keyword. Function space clicked parentheses end parentheses. I better push this up. So I put this after the table tag. I have a script tag. It says function clicked. On the next line, I'm going to put an open curly brace. This is how JavaScript and a great many other languages handle tabs. You don't have to do the tabs or the colons. Instead, you use curly braces to denote your blocks of code. What's this function going to do? It's going to call the alert function. Alert, parentheses, quote, thank you, exclamation mark, end quote, in parentheses. Semicolon. Great many languages follow what's known as the C-style syntax, which is curly braces and lines are terminated with semicolons. Not every single line, but a lot of them. Lines that are part of logic blocks, like if statements and while statements, do not end in a semicolon like that. All right, now guess what? If we don't put a slash script tag then it's assuming that the rest of this is part of the script. And that's all going to be syntax errors because that's not Java. So we have to close our script. Open angle slash or forward slash script close angle. Now that doesn't do a darn thing until I make the button call it. And right now, there's nothing telling the button to call it. So you remember when we were doing TK enter programming, we had to say that the button called a function. Otherwise it didn't call it. We're going to do the same thing. And just to demonstrate, I'm going to run it. Click it. Doesn't do a thing. So what we're going to do is what the attribute that calls the function is called onClick. So before or after the type tag, as long as it's before the closing brace, and I think I'm going to add it before the type tag, even though that looks a little bit odd. Just make it easier to see. OnClick equals quote clicked open parentheses close parentheses. I don't think it's necessary to put a semicolon there, but if we were going to put multiple lines of code there, it would be semicolon, end quote, space. Now this is winding up off the screen, so I'm going to tab everything over like that.
Do you need a semicolon after click? On the button on click?
Right there?
Yeah, do you need
No, because this is a tag.
No, I meant
Excuse me,
on
an
the
attribute.
clicked on the
I don't need that one, no. If
Okay.
you're asking if it's necessary, no. But if we were to embed multiple commands, then we would be separating them by semicolons, so it's just a habit. Yeah, very good point. That's not necessary. Control S to save it. Try to view it. It says click me, and when we click me, it says thank you. Now, pop-ups are the devil, so don't put a lot of them in your page. But it sure is a nice way of showing that the JavaScript ran. So now we're going to modify our program so that when you click it, it writes something to the page using the document object model. So I don't recall whether this has to be embedded directly in it or not. I believe that it'll trigger as soon as the web page loads if we do not define it as part of a function. So I'm going to go back to my editor, and underneath the button I'm going to start defining another script, angle, script, close angle. And this is going to be all lowercase, document.write, parentheses, quote, and what are we going to write? How about a P tag? So angle, P, close P. We wrote this, exclamation mark, and then close the tag. angle slash P in slash. Now we have to put our closing quote and our closing parentheses. So it looks just like a lot like a print statement. We could write an entire web page just with document write commands.
You didn't do a closing script.
I didn't do a closing script. That's why it did not work. I hope that's why it did not work. Angle slash script. End angle. And there it says, we wrote this. If we right click, view page source, we're going to see all of our stuff. It's going to be a little bit more nicely formatted than ours was. Maybe. Or maybe it matches our formatting exactly. Yeah, I think it does. If you're using Chrome, you can right click on it, do inspect, and you get a whole bunch more information about it. Right, it shows this as a tree. There's a body tag, a closed body tag. I click the little expand, and I see a whole bunch more stuff. I can expand my table. Right, so it gives you an overview in outline mode. And it's showing you the way the page is set up. If I highlight this, I see that it's part of the table. Or if I come over here and click on the button, it's showing me which part of the web page that modifies. If I right click on that and say delete element, is it going to change my source code? No, but it's going to remove it from what is currently being displayed. And I've used the term a couple of times, but what happens is as the browser is loading up that HTML file, it takes every tab and puts it in a tree structure known as a document object model. And then the browser turns that document object model into a page. And it's interactive, so if I delete that element, if I delete my button, it's no longer there. It's no longer part of the document object model. It's gone. But, you know, if I refresh the page, it's back because it didn't change my source code. It just lets me work interactively with it once it's loaded into the document object model. All right. I'm almost interested in commenting all of this out, but that would be kind of tacky. So instead, what we're going to try to do is we're going to create some functions that would write maybe a table. So we're going to open up another script tag, script close function space tabletop parentheses title. Now I'm not going to get too fancy. I don't want to mess things up. Next line, open curly brace, document.write, parentheses, quote, angle, table. Now we're going to notice something. If we use double quotes on our attributes, it would interfere with this double quotes here. So inside these double quotes, I'm going to be using single quotes for the attribute. Style equals single quote, border, colon, 1px, I believe it's dashed. Yeah, I'm dotted. I'm just going to stick with solid. Double. How about double? It looks really tacky. 1px. Well, it better be more than 1px if we're going to make it double. How about 4px? Double. And what color do we want it? Purple. End quote. Except there I botched it. Since the attribute starts with a single quote, it needs to end with a single quote. And I'm going to go ahead and be complete. Make that a semicolon, a single quote. This is getting really long here. So what do I need to do? I need to close my table tag like that. And then a close quote, and then a close parentheses. Now that wound up being really long, so I'm going to try to break this up into something that fits on my screen. So document right, parentheses, a double quote. At the very end there should be a double quote and a close parentheses. And inside it there should be a tag which opens with an angle, closes with an angle. And now we're going to close our function with a close angle brace. Now we're going to add a line, a TR. Maybe a TR-TD combination to make this easy so we don't have to write way too many functions. So the next function is going to be called function space table row. Open parentheses, close parentheses. No yawning. This is exciting stuff. Wake up. I kid. Open brace. Same thing. We're going to document write something. Maybe we can shorten the syntax. Document dot write, open parentheses, quote, angle TR, because we're starting a row, end angle, angle TD, end angle, XYZ, slash TD, slash TR, and I'm forgetting to put say angle every time, end quote, end close, parentheses, semicolon. Semicolon, and then back tab, close angle. Now we're going to only add one more function. Did I miss something? Pardon me?
You didn't put a semicolon at the end.
You're right. I want to put, wait. A semicolon where?
The end of document, right?
There's one there.
The ending parentheses, there's no, on tabletop, not row. After you do table, style, border, purple.
You're right. I forgot this semicolon. Put a semicolon here, gang. Right there. Table style, border, all that stuff needs a terminating semicolon. All right, and we're going to make one more table function which just writes out the slash table. So function space table end, parentheses, end parentheses, hit enter, open curly brace, document dot write, open parentheses, quote, and let's put a slash table tag in there. Angle, slash, table, end angle, end quote, end parentheses. Semicolon. Enter, back tab, there. All right, we have these functions, and they're not going to do a dang thing because they're not being invoked. Unlike this one. Since this one was not enclosed in a function, it ran. This stuff, these things are enclosed in functions, so they're not going to execute. We'll fix that. So that's why we don't see our table. Well, let's call those functions. Just like in Python, the unindented code, the code that's not enclosed in any functions, are the ones that actually execute. So let's call tabletop. Tabletop, parentheses, end parentheses, semicolon. Next line. let's write out a few rows. Rows, not roles. Table row, parentheses, in parentheses, semicolon. Put 2 or 3 out there. Table ROW, parentheses, in parentheses, semicolon. And then table end, parentheses, in parentheses, semicolon. Now we've written a great big script. I mean, it's not that big. We better close it at the very end. So the last thing after this bunch of writing we did is angle slash script, end angle. It could be we've typed so much that you're going to have syntax errors that I'm not going to be able to spot when I do walkabout. All right, and there's my table. If I wanted more lines of rows, I could just copy those. Right? I don't know why I spaced it out like that, but then when I run it, our table's got a whole bunch of rows. This is a very simple introduction to server-side programming, except for the fact that it's not on the server. But if this web page was being generated by a server, it could call some code that would generate or call these functions, right? We see now that this stuff could be pretty easily generated programmatically based on your code. Some Python code could go and insert these things into the HTML document before the HTML document was sent to you, sent to the browser. So on the server side, you can have programming languages like Java, JavaScript, Python, all sorts of things that generate the text file before it serves it out the internet for the browser to pick up. And every single time you make a call, that page is generated fresh. Just like whenever you load Amazon, you can be quite sure that there are programs in there running on extremely fast computers with extremely good databases that generate the entire page programmatically. Same for Facebook, same for eBay and all the other complicated sites. I am curious as to whether we can add a button that will call like these 3 functions. Now, I'm not sure about that. Let's add a button that at least tries to write to the page. And it may just be about the end thing we do because I need to do a walkabout. I'm going to add a button tag, angle, button, on click equals, and again, I'm just going to embed some JavaScript right here. Double quote, table top, parentheses, in parentheses, semicolon, table row, parentheses, in parentheses, semicolon, table end, parentheses, in parentheses, semicolon. End quote. We better add a close tag, and we better put some text. Let's make our text add row, exclamation mark, and then we're going to close our button tag. Angle slash button. And I'm reasonably sure that I have typed too quickly, so I can print this out for anybody who wants to type it in after class, and it's not necessary for you to finish it. Oh, by the way, I'll make a parenthetical comment. I hope y'all haven't been doing this, but if you miss a day and you skip watching the video and you just copy the notes and paste the notes, if I figure out you've been doing that, you're going to get a 0 for that lecture. I haven't been checking for y'all, so you've got away with it this time. But no, that may not be strictly true. I may have been checking it. In fact, did I put a notice to that effect on our class? Or was it the other class? Anyways, I noticed some folks doing that, and so they have to fill out lecture review forms for the videos. And one of the way I noticed it is that they were, a character-for-character copy of the notes. Another is that they were all uploaded like within 1 minute of each other, right? So it's pretty obvious you just downloaded the file, and turned around, went to the Dropbox, and uploaded it. Please don't do that in any of my further classes. And what it means to me is that I'm going to have to convert these notes into images where you won't be able to copy and paste from them. And that'll be a real drag. And I don't know if I'm going to do that or not. Okay, let's see if it works. Save it, run it. I'm going to click Add Row. Well, it did write it. It erased everything else in the document. I'm kind of disappointed it did that, but I can't really say that I'm surprised. Instead, what we should be doing is tagging these with names so that we can modify the contents of the names. And we really, really just about don't have any time for that. But I'd really, really, really like for you to see it. So I'm going to try to add it. I'm going to delete all this stuff. All right. I'm not going to be able to do it fast enough unless I open up my other example document. If you need to leave, that's okay. Really would like for y'all just to see this. We'll probably have to expand on this in our last lecture.
Is there no class on Thursday of next week?
That's correct. That's correct, because that would be when somebody was taking a final.
Oh.
Alrighty. What we're going to do is we're going to make the button hide itself as soon as we click it, just to prove that we can. So we're going to need to give it an ID. Or maybe we could hide our picture. Let's just make the button hide itself. So I'm going to go back to my text. I'm going to give the button an ID. So button ID equals victim. It's a victim of our hiding. Is that how you spell victim? Yeah. All right. Space, on-click equals, and we should embed this in a script, but in the interest of time, we're just going to put it right in the code. Yeah, let's just change its style. No, I really want it to work. And we're going to find the element by its ID, and we're going to try to change it. Now we're just going to try to change its visibility. If this doesn't work right off the bat, nah. We don't have time to finish this. I'm sorry. So why don't we just add something that changes the appearance of it? We're going to change the... No, we're not. We're going to stop right there. We'll save the rest of it for the next time when I have my notes better prepared for this. This is about as far as I wanted to get. But what I'm trying to get to the point is once you assign an ID to any element, then that ID can be the victim of the JavaScript. You can hide it, you can show it, you can change its size, you can insert new things into it, and that's how the web pages start to really become interactive. So let's make a Dropbox for this, and then we will be done.